Hi, welcome to the Talkspot. This is Marcus, and today I'm joined by Dr. John Gray. John's written books such as Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and he also wrote Staying Focused in a Hyper World. Dr. John, thank you for coming on.
I'm really happy to be with you.
So I guess one question I'd ask right off the bat, and please forgive me if some of these questions might sound redundant, but I guess what are some things that you think men and women don't understand about each other?
Well, a lot of things. And there's men and women, the younger generation and the older generation and the generation in between. They're all different. As couples get older, usually women become more masculine, men become more feminine, they stop having sex. What's happening in the younger generation is that for a variety of reasons, the males' testosterone levels are much, much lower than previous generations, and we might say they're more in touch with their emotions, and women are much more in touch with their testosterone hormones, which are the male hormones. So they're not, they may have an interest in sex, but it doesn't last long, and so they're not forming long-lasting relationships. As a common theme, there's certainly exceptions everywhere. And then you got the couples who actually get married and they have children. When they're interdependent like that, not so independent, then book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus usually describes their relationships to a T. But when women are more independent, they tend to be more on their masculine side, and they think they're from Mars. So I've written a book for them, and for the older couples as well, which is called Beyond Mars and Venus. So when you're not sort of living the more typical, traditional male-female, male provider, woman depending on man for survival kind of a thing, take care of the family. When you're out of that realm, and you're more independent, your hormones change, and so you have a whole other set of misunderstandings between men and women. Generally speaking, what women don't understand about themselves is that when they're stressed, they're way on their male side. They're producing more testosterone, they're producing less estrogen, they're producing less progesterone. And this is very common today where women are feeling overwhelmed. And they think that, I just have so much to do, I have no time. Actually, that's an illusion. It's not they don't have more time. They make choices which cause them to have not enough time. They make choices and commitments so that they feel they have to do more. And they also have an addiction to perfection, which is really making them unhappy. So I would call that, in my experience of working with couples and individuals, that is where women are too far on their male side. And that's a symptom of overwhelm, exhaustion, resentment, and so forth. They're giving and giving and giving. They don't feel they're getting back. So they have to learn how to receive, how to learn to enjoy their life more, how to come back to balance. And it's such a cliche to say, well, you need to be happy. Every husband will say, honey, what's wrong with you? You're not happy. Mm-hmm. And that's not the answer. Be happy is the goal. But how do you get there is now we have a real biological, physiological reason why their happiness isn't there. It's something called hormonal imbalance. And for women, for example, they don't know, and men don't know for sure about women, which is that if a woman talks about her feelings and a man listens, doesn't interrupt, doesn't try to fix, doesn't minimize, and she actually becomes more vulnerable and expresses emotions that are even not reasonable, and he's being empathetic and understanding, she will produce an enormous amount of estrogen, which will be very helpful for her to have romantic feeling. And not all the time either, particularly the 5 days before ovulation is when she needs that extra boost of estrogen for well-being. Otherwise, her mind is filled with what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong. Her mind just sees criticism and complaints and is not satisfied and starts looping on what's not working. Then after ovulation, intimacy is not the primary need. It's a need, but actually the me time is a primary need, or social bonding, which is doing things that you like to do, as opposed to doing things you don't like to do in order to earn money. As soon as you do things you don't like to do to earn money or get in a risk and danger situation and you're a woman, your testosterone goes up. Now that helps you solve the problem, but you can't make progesterone. And when you can't make progesterone, when you're making testosterone, and you can't, then what happens is you get something called estrogen dominance. So for half the cycle, estrogen is like the savior for women, and the other half of the cycle, if their progesterone is low, they get estrogen dominance, and that causes moodiness and irritability and dissatisfaction and even suicidal feelings. So all of that is what's going on with women today, and they don't even know that the reason is their own hormonal imbalance, and they tend to look out at the world as though the world's making them feel this way, but actually it's the world is a reflection of their own imbalance inside. Now, men, on the other hand, what's happening for the new generation of men is very low testosterone men. They're way more emotional. They want to play more. They want to enjoy more. They play games, they watch sports, and they do internet porn. And all these things are extremely pleasurable. Anything which is pleasurable is estrogen stimulating, and that lowers testosterone. Testosterone is like Spartan. You know, you read about the books about the Spartans, you know, they just did the tough stuff, you know, and they didn't indulge in anything. That made them super muscular and also made them great fighters and also made them high testosterone. But ironically, testosterone, it doesn't have to be that high, but it's testosterone that creates positive mood in men. When men's testosterone levels are low, they feel lazy, they feel not motivated, they feel addicted to playing as opposed to doing things which are good for making money, good for taking care of their family, good for their health. They just indulge. And it's like an addiction. It's like, if you eat ice cream, you want more and more and more. Pleasure is addictive. Estrogen is addictive for men. And so men go too far to their estrogen side, and they lose their positive mood. They become irritable, grumpy, and they can lose attraction to their partner quite quickly and want to seek out another partner. Or they can even lose their erections after a while getting to know a woman and loving her. The estrogen lowers his testosterone too much because he tends to run low on testosterone. He compensates then by going online and having, fun time doing internet sex, which will stimulate higher than normal levels of dopamine and testosterone. That the reaction to that is an inhibited ability to be turned on to a real woman. So just like if you were to take cocaine, your ability to experience happiness in normal situations diminishes by 30%. You literally lose 30% of your brain's ability to be happy by normal situations. Another simple example of that, and staying focused in the hyper world, would be, this ADD book, which is much more common in men than women. It's if you give your kids a lot of desserts, the vegetables just don't taste good anymore. Things that would normally taste good, if you do high stimulation, then they become boring and flat. And that's what happens in relationships when people have these extra stimulants that are too high. And the vulnerability men have today is releasing your energy on the internet with someone you don't love or care about or know. So these are like all new challenges that are big time happening. And for women, the female equivalent of internet addiction is something that's happening now more than most people realize. It's every woman has not every woman, but a lot of women have their vibrators. And the more you use a vibrator, the less a man can actually stimulate you. Your decreased capacity to be turned on by a real guy by using a vibrator. You need to find a real guy to do it for you. And likewise, you need good communication to even show your interest in sex. A lot of women have become not even interested in sex. It's very common in marriage for couples to lose interest in sex. And he's off doing it with the internet or having an affair, and she's like, doesn't even need it. Sex is a need that everybody has. That's why we fall in love. We have lots of sex. And then what happens, the problem with the sex need is that when you lose your need, when you lose the juice for sex, you feel like you don't want sex. You don't care about sex. It's not there. But it's a big problem. It means that you're losing your vitality, your youthfulness, your energy. One of the most powerful ways to find hormonal balance is for a woman to have an orgasm and for a man to give it to her. That's a maximum testosterone producer in man. One of the keys here is to understand that testosterone is the well-being hormone for men. A man has 30 to 50 times more than a woman. I'm sorry, I got lost there for a minute. My computer started making a big loud noise.
Oh, and it's no problem. Yeah, it does kind of lead to one thing I wanted to ask you about was this whole, dilemma of younger people maybe in their mid to late 20s to maybe even their 30s. And that, in your opinion, do you feel like, is there something of an epidemic almost of younger people not being in relationships? It seemed like I read an article the other day that said that in San Francisco, I guess near where you're at, that there's more dogs than children in the city. And I've seen other reports too that younger people are just having sex less, like even not even marital sex, just sex less in general. Do you feel like, is there something happening? Like, what is this? I mean, is it just like what you're saying? Is it just men not having a lot of testosterone and women having too much testosterone? Or is there something else going on? And is this like a real issue, like a very important issue?
This is a major crisis. I wrote a whole book 2 years ago called Boy Crisis, which extends into 30 years old, extends into 50 years old. But it's the crisis that males are going through. And every problem has, spiritual implications. It has its behavioral implications. It has educational implications. It has biological ones. And anytime I delve into any of the other explanations, people have that's just opinion. But when you come down to biology, there's no opinion here. We know that if a man has low testosterone, he can't sustain sexual interest in a woman. Okay, that's the first thing. Second, if women have too much testosterone and they're not making enough estrogen, they can't fall in love with a man, and they can't sustain being in love with a man. And their interest in having children or their interest in being married diminishes. So these are biological realities that we have, we can see. This is just like almost a fact. And this is what's happening as an epidemic. Now, you can take apart the epidemic in a variety of different ways. One is the extremely non-controversial one, which is just simply the food that people eat determines hormone production. Also, attitudes determine hormone production. Behaviors stimulate hormone production. Let's start with the food. When you eat fast foods, they're all the meats are filled with hormones. Well, those hormones, they go into a man's body, and they stimulate the body to think that they bind with what's called the estrogen receptor sites, and that sends a message to his brain that says, stop making testosterone. Now, that's what happens. So you eat meats, and also when you eat foods that are with pesticides, any of these pesticides on our vegetables, okay, when the pesticides are there, and even more so when they're like Roundup, which is GMO plants, they use Roundup, which is a very powerful pesticide or fungicide. And what it does is it binds with the estrogen receptor sites and sends a message to the brain, do not make testosterone. So that's what's happening to males. Now, for females, when they have the same exposure to these are called xenoestrogens. That means estrogens from the outside rather than estrogens that you're making. So these xenoestrogens, the pesticides, the hormones, when they go into a woman's body, they bind with the estrogen receptor sites, and that sends a message to her brain that she no longer needs to make estrogen, because women need to make 10 to 20 times more estrogen depending upon what time of the month it is. So they need to make estrogen. Now, how do you make estrogen? You make it through relationships. When you feel dependent on someone for something, when you need someone for something, when you need love, your estrogen levels, if you get that love, will go up. So when women today are exposed to all these xenoestrogens, the brain gets the message they have plenty of estrogen, so they don't feel the need to make estrogen, so they don't feel the intuitive, automatic, natural instinct to want to make love, to seek out love from a man, to enjoy a relationship, to make babies. All those things come from a need. The biology says, oh, this is what you need, but our biology is all messed up. So that's on a physical level. Now we got the behavioral level. What we have is a situation which has never occurred in history. Another situation, which is women are now more independent. And generally speaking, women were not this independent. They don't really need men. So what do you need a man for? So if you don't feel the need for a man, it used to be women needed a man if she was going to get pregnant and have children. She needed a man to protect her and take care of her and pay the bills. And so she could, concentrate on the family. So we had a nice partnership that was more traditional. And in cases where a man actually made a good living, a fair living, it worked out quite well. When he didn't make enough money, his testosterone would go down, he would behave irresponsibly, and he's a bad guy. So we have a history of bad guys, but we have more history of good guys who got paid for their jobs. Well, now women can go out there and make the money, so what do they need a man for? So when you don't feel you need someone, you don't make estrogen. Or when you don't feel you need someone, you don't feel love. See, love is what motivates us to pair and to be in a relationship, is this deep love that we feel, which actually can generate an ecstatic state of making love. But you have to feel this deep love. Now, to feel deep love, you have to feel deep need. Now, people will argue that, and I'll just say, okay, look, we all need food, But go 2 days without food, and you'll feel you really need food, and whatever you eat will be fantastic. And then if you eat again within an hour, it won't be fantastic. You have to feel the need. You have to feel the hunger, and then you feel greater love. Well, women don't feel greater love for men like they used to because women don't need men like they used to. And what I've done is written books that explain that your unhappiness in life, women, is because you've disconnected with your new needs. Because you see, Maslow explained in 1940 that when your lower needs are fulfilled, you get higher needs. And the higher need that women today have is the need for one is the need to be independent, and that's what they're achieving. But the other one is to find balance, to have the need to be vulnerable, which they're not doing. They don't know how to be vulnerable. They don't know how to reveal what's inside of themselves, because a lot of what's inside of themselves are emotions that are not necessarily that reasonable. Because the male side of us is reasonable, the emotional side of us can be completely not reasonable. It can be, non-rational. You see, and when I say that, men can be non-rational too. It's that whenever you're emotional, if your emotions are negative, for example, they're not that rational. But if we don't give ourselves permission to be feminine, we try to make them rational. Now we blame everybody for how we feel rather than taking responsibility for how we feel. And women today have a greater need to go over to that emotional side, and they don't know it. They don't know how. This is all new because they're way on their male side. They're producing all this testosterone. They need how to come back to the female side, and somebody has to teach them. They have to learn how to be vulnerable, how to communicate in a way with a man so that he'll listen. And men have to also learn how to listen, but emphasize what I just said, because so many women will say, oh, he doesn't listen, he doesn't understand. I said, no, you don't understand how to share your feelings in a way where he will listen. So, somebody says, well, how do you do that? Well, you read my books, but this is the short part of it, which is you go to him while he's watching TV and ignoring you. You say, honey, when you're done with that show, I need your help. I need your help. Magic phrase for estrogen to get produced. Then he says, okay, what is it? He'll come. He's curious. What is it? I just need to talk for 5 or 10 minutes about my day. And there was a bunch of frustrating things. I just want to share them. I don't want you to fix it. You don't have to say anything. But in fact, I prefer you not say anything. And then at the end, give me a big hug, and I'll feel really good. So you train him. He doesn't know how to listen, and you don't know how to share vulnerability. If you just start complaining about your day, that doesn't do much. But if you actually go and share what you're feeling on an emotional level, the emotions that you hide all day long, because when you're in a man's world, you have to hide your emotions. You can't reveal your emotions. So whatever you can't reveal, and often you can't reveal to yourself if you're making a lot of testosterone. Testosterone suppresses emotions. And if you're a woman, that's not a good thing because it suppresses estrogen production. For a man, it's not a problem. Everybody says, oh, men are suppressing their emotions. Not a problem. In fact, when men get emotional, they need to stop talking, detach, do something that makes them feel good solving problems. Do something good, and that will actually raise your testosterone again. Then your heart will open. Then reflect on how you contributed to whatever problem you were having with your partner. And then go back and be loving. It's like don't go back and complain and whine and argue. Men have to get that you weaken. You become a wimp when you express anger. Anger is fear. Okay, if somebody's really angry, if you were to say to them, oh, you're just afraid, they go, no, I'm not afraid. Well, he has no idea what he's feeling. And granted, most men don't. Some do. But you wouldn't be angry if you weren't afraid. If you weren't afraid of the situation, afraid of losing love, afraid of someone attacking you, afraid of someone judging you, afraid of someone withholding love. If you weren't afraid, then when your partner was being critical of you, oh, okay, tell me more, help me understand that better. And I'm not saying you should sit there and listen to criticism, whatever. I'm teaching women how to stop complaining so much, and only on the big things complain. Don't waste time talking about the little stuff.
No, that's fair. I mean, I guess another question I want to ask you about is, have you heard of this? I don't know if I want to call it a movement, but this idea of MGTOW, like men going their own way. Have you heard of this?
No, not this word that you've just said. I don't know about that word. Maybe tell me more about that.
Okay, well, basically it's this, I mean, again, I don't want to call it a movement, but maybe they call it a movement, but it's basically this idea of younger men that are, in their 20s or 30s primarily, that have the ability to get with a girl. Like, they're not people that necessarily look bad or they carry themselves in a like they're not social outcasts, let's say, but they're purposely kind of living life independent of women, and they're just, maybe they'll just have casual relationships for a while, or they'll just do casual hookups, or they're just, they just want to have fun and just, like you kind of mentioned earlier, just focus on, or just if they have a sexual desire, they just go to porn.
Yeah, they want to have pleasure. They want to have fun. It's an addiction. This is men too far on their female side. So I haven't heard about it, but I see it all over the place. It's why there's twice as many single people now than there were before. Okay, twice as many people are not hooking up. And this whole thing inside of us, what happens to men is when we go out of balance, you see, everything's out of balance to a great extent right now. Women are too far to their male side. Men go too far to their female side. What kept men in their male side, by the way, was that women needed us. I mean, you weren't going to get laid unless you made some woman need you. You had to provide something, and then you got laid. I mean, sex isn't a given for men. We want sex. But it used to be you couldn't get sex unless you provided something for women. But now women are on their male side, and they don't need men that much anyway, so men go way to their female side. Men just want to play. They want to have fun. And they're from my opinion, and what I teach men is, now we'll get into some basics for the guys, is you're wasting your life away. You have no idea what's possible for you in terms of the depth of fulfillment and the deep feeling of love. We're here to love, and men are not aware, many men are not aware of their deep need for love. To the extent that they're aware of their need for sex, they actually have a greater need to feel loved. But more than feeling loved, it's to earn that love, to do something, to feel successful, to provide. But men don't have a clue as to what women need today, because remember I mentioned they need different stuff. And women don't have a clue to a great extent of what they need. They need to come back and be vulnerable. They need a man's help. A man can help women come back to their female side. That's the primary way for her to connect half of the month, particularly for 5 days of the month. 5 days after her period, her estrogen levels need to double. And the way they double is by feeling dependent or needing someone. But you don't need or depend on a man for money. So how do you get up to that place where you fall in love and have big orgasms and so forth and enjoy romantic love, being in love, sweetening and softening and all that? Well, you do it by communication, the intimacy of what you feel and revealing emotions that you would normally not share with anybody. And often the problem is you don't even know you have them yourself. You have to go to a good coach or therapist to help you get in touch with what you're feeling. Like I just mentioned, the guy who's angry, he's afraid. The woman who's, not feeling anything, she's got a whole bag of feelings inside. She resents, she's angry, she's afraid, she's insecure, she feels unworthy, she feels disappointed. There's a whole range of emotions. I've been doing this 50 years. I take women up on stage in my seminars, not all of them, of course, but you take the woman who's like fine, good, all right, kind of like a guy, and boom, underneath it is one layer of another emotion, another emotion, another emotion. There's so much hidden to ourselves. So the solution today is, it's a disaster going on, like you said. It's a big, big problem. Now, practically speaking, what's the big problem is people still have sex, they make babies, and over half the babies in America, half the boys born in America, don't even know who their fathers are.
Wow. I didn't know that number.
Yeah, don't even know the fathers. This is horrible. A boy who doesn't have a bond with his father doesn't, again, remember I talked about what keeps our testosterone levels low. It will keep your testosterone levels low. It all happens as soon as daddy comes into the room, rough and tumble play, dad's there trying to impress dad be proud of you. All these things increase testosterone in little boys. And if you've got a mother who's raising you and she doesn't have a husband, that means she's the husband. She's got to do both. And she tends to be on her male side. She has to be independent. It's hard enough being a single woman being independent. Doubly hard to be a mother, and independent, supporting herself. So the little boy grows up not seeing a man make a woman happy. He has no experience. And actually what he gets in many cases is a mother who feels a man can't make her happy and she doesn't need a man in her life. So if you don't see your father providing something meaningful to a woman, what do you have to offer a woman? So a deep level of insecurity rises inside of males today. And when you're insecure, you can't make a commitment because you don't have enough testosterone to even sustain it. But if you're insecure, you're afraid always is not going to last, and you can't make her happy, and all it takes is for her to be in a bad mood, and you're like, out of there. I'm done with this.
So what are some ways then that men can, I guess, step up? Like, what are some practical things you would tell young men and young women that are, that are in this weird limbo that you've described, where they're just single and just kind of drifting through life?
Well, the bottom line is there's a lot I have to say, and I've covered a lot of ground already.
That's a good point.
It's quite, but I've got a book for those people, and that's called Beyond Mars and Venus, and that means going beyond the stereotypes where men were like more masculine and women were more feminine. Right now we're in role reversal, and to know the symptoms of it and to know that you're confused, and it's a confusing time. There's no, if you go to a university, they're teaching you that you should all be like women and something's wrong with men. I mean, this is the climate that's going on in the world, and that gender doesn't even exist. Gender is a real reality. If you've got a penis, you need certain kinds of support in life. And if you don't, you need a different kind of support in life. And there's just a huge amount of people out there that deny that truth. So you need to get on board with Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And you won't relate to that book so much, but you will relate to Beyond Mars and Venus. And go online, watch some of my talks. Go to my website, marsvenus.com. This is big stuff. Your whole life is it's just going to be out of balance if you don't get back into balance and start honoring. And it doesn't have to be so hard either. It's just educating us, sort of conflicting against, this whole cultural denial of sexual differences. And that sexual differences doesn't mean we can't treat each other with equal respect. We're all different people, and women and men have significant differences that are universal. And I have pointed those out, and I can help people to work with those, as I mentioned, in a variety of different ways. But we have to get that we need a new education. And unless we start changing our education on this, the problem's just getting worse. And it is. You pointed it out. And males, one other thing, young guys, stay away from internet porn. Every time you get off on that, it's an addiction. It's like taking cocaine, and it diminishes your ability to enjoy your life and to sustain an erection with a real woman. It diminishes. Now, that's my book that you mentioned at the beginning called Staying Focused in a Hyper World. It's about ADD and brain function. Teach you how the brain works, but there's nothing more potent men are just going way out of balance. Their testosterone levels go lower and lower every time you go online and do porn. It's a spike which desensitizes your brain, so now you need more stimulation and more stimulation. And it's an addiction. And, you lose your potency. I'll tell you one before we end, because I got to finish up too. The Japanese did a study on guys in their 20s. Okay, this is virile guys in their 20s. And they have sex or they ejaculate on Saturday. The next day, their testosterone goes down. And what they found is that if you don't ejaculate or have sex for 6 days, on the 7th day, your testosterone levels will double. That's what you need to feel. You need to give up all this releasing your energy and do it once a week and not more. And ideally do it with a real woman. And definitely don't do it with a fake woman because it's artificial. It overstimulates your brain and desensitizes you to normal stimulation. It's like if you give a child sugar all the time, their vegetables, healthy food, doesn't taste good. So love and relationships is what life's about. Happiness, about the little things in life, being fulfilled and energetic and enthusiastic and excited and turned on, having hot sex with just the same person over and over. Now, eventually, I'll just say this, there's a lot of books online you can go to. I haven't written this one yet, but so other people have written similar type ideas of how to have orgasms without ejaculating. Guys should check this out. Learn how to control your sex drive so you don't ejaculate every time, and then you can really, have sex all the time, and you never lose interest in women, as opposed to having your testosterone levels drop. So that's our potential. For me, I'm 68 years old, have sex every day, but I don't ejaculate. If I ejaculate, it'd be 9 or 10 days before I'm in the mood again. But you can learn how to have orgasms and have sex for an hour. I mean, she'll have 10 orgasms in that time. I mean, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the discipline you want to learn. This is the new stuff. So Mantak Chia has a book called The Multi-Orgasmic Man. There's also a book called The Tao of Sexology from Dr. Chang wrote that one. That's a beginning on this whole study. It's a journey. It's a journey, learning about your body, learning to control your sexual energy, and becoming potent, virile, strong, high testosterone. That's what you want. And, we've got a lot of forces against us right now.
So real quick before you go, how can we keep up with everything that you're doing? Like, are you on Twitter, or can we visit your website, or how can we keep up?
My website, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, my website's marsvenus.com, and I do, and I'm also on YouTube as well, but I got so many videos, and marsvenus.com, we have so much. And then we also have my health food store. There's a Tonkat Ali's, one of our most popular supplements that we recommend for testosterone boosting. There's several others to help kick estrogen out of the body, but I find supplements to be very helpful as well. But the main thing is the behavioral changes, but supplements can help too.
All right, great. Well, John, thank you so much for stopping by today. I mean, I really enjoyed this conversation. I mean, hopefully we'll be able to pick it up sometime in the future, and definitely thank you again for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
All right, take care.